News Radio. Take a break with Wins. Love podcasts? Radio.com has thousands of true crime, comedy, kids and family podcasts, and more. Listen anytime, anywhere. On your PC, smart speakers, and a variety of connected devices. Or download the Radio.com app now from the App Store or Google Play.
One of America's top radio personalities, Jim Bohannon, brings his wit, wisdom, and natural charm to listeners on Guam. Voted one of the 100 most important radio talk show hosts in America, The Jim Bohannon Show brings listeners a unique blend of breaking news, interesting features, and informative reports on a spectrum of topics. The Jim Bohannon Show, Saturday through Monday from 6 to 9 p.m. and a Sunday morning bonus show from 6 to 9 a.m. Jim Bohannon on Guam's only news talk superstation, 93.3 The Point.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
To wear a mask or not to? It's confusing. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. The Centers for Disease Control says people who are fully vaccinated need not wear a mask indoors or out in most cases, but confusion lingers. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki trying to clarify the guidance.
If you have been vaccinated, their recommendation is that you are safe not to wear a mask inside, outside, and when you're not in large public gatherings. There's going to be a determination about implementation, and there are going to be populations and communities where they take a different approach to implementation.
And L.A. is one of those communities. Several major retailers last week announcing they were dropping mask requirements for customers. Los Angeles County now ordering stores to continue to require masks until at least June 15th, when the state of California plans to reopen its economy. CDC says 123 million Americans are now fully vaccinated. President Biden says he'll begin sharing coronavirus vaccines with other countries.
Working with the world's democracies, we'll coordinate a multilateral effort to end this pandemic.
President promising details next month at the G7 summit meeting in Britain, which he plans to attend. Like millions of Americans, the first family has filed their taxes.
President Biden and the First Lady earned $607,000 last year and paid a 25.9% federal income tax rate. The Bidens donated more than $30,000 to 10 charities, the largest donation to the Beau Biden Foundation, named for the president's late son. Vice President Kamala Harris and her husband, Doug Emhoff, earned more than $1.5 million last year and paid an income tax rate of 36.7%. Former President Trump broke with a decades-long tradition and declined to release his tax returns during his 4 years in office.
Fox's Jared Halpern. America is listening to Fox News.
Busy week, Mezcla Bistro and Tuman has you covered. Let us take the worries out of your dinner meal planning. Check out our daily specials or enjoy some of your local favorites. Plus, receive a free kids meal with each adult dinner entree purchased Monday through Thursday. Call 969-2652 for more information or to make a reservation at the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tuman. And don't forget, Jack Larimer is live every Saturday night. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro, a true taste of Guam.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
A homeowner's policy protects much more than just your house. It also protects you against claims from someone being hurt on your property. If a visitor is injured at your place, how much are you covered for? The smart thing to do is get the answer today.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
The UN Security Council will not be issuing a statement of grave concern over the flaring violence at the Gaza Strip. The U.S. has vetoed it as the rocket fire and retaliatory airstrikes continue.
4 rockets from Gaza were intercepted by those Iron Dome missiles. One got through, hitting a building in the city nearby, injuring 3 people. Those rockets in response to some heavy Israeli airstrikes in Gaza throughout the day. Militants and their underground network targeted. All told, during this week plus of strife, some 10 Israelis killed, 200 in Gaza, including women and children, as the pressure builds from all quarters for some kind of a ceasefire. We talked to an Israeli Defense Force officer. We asked, when would there be a sign? When would there be an indication? He said, when the rockets end, or at least the firing tapers off.
Fox's Greg Palcott in Israel. The White House says it is engaging in quiet diplomacy in the Middle East. House Minority Whip Steve Scalise says it's too quiet.
Hamas is behind this. Iran is behind this. Joe Biden spent more time trying to help Iran get a nuclear weapon in his first 120 days than he has standing behind Israel and standing up to the anti-Semites in the House who have been criticizing Israel.
Congressman Scalise speaking on Fox's Hannity. The former suburban Minneapolis police officer accused of killing 20-year-old Dante Wright, making a virtual court appearance Monday.
Kim Potter claims she meant to shoot Wright with her taser during a traffic stop, but accidentally reached for her gun. In court, the judge found probable cause for the second-degree murder charge against Potter, who so far has not entered a plea. December was established as a potential trial date. In body camera video, Potter's heard warning Wright she was going to use her taser, but says she accidentally grabbed her gun. It happened in the Minneapolis suburb of Brooklyn Center as the George Floyd trial was ongoing. There was rioting and looting after. In Minneapolis, Matt Finn, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
Half a day, this is Honey. Here at APL, our expertise and extensive network can help you grow your business and reach out to more global markets. As a responsible carrier, APL is also committed to a sustainable future, whether it's protecting the environment or investing our efforts in giving back to the community. Our dedicated teams in Guam, Saipan, and on U.S. mainland are here to support you. Call 588-4651 or visit apl.com.
Do you dread waiting in those long, inconvenient lines? That's why you won't find them at Bank Pacific. We're back to our pre-COVID Monday to Saturday hours with all of our branches open. You know, that where others put branches, we place roots thing. And if you don't want to come to the bank, we have MyCloud Banking through which you can go to the bank on any of your devices, including through our new cool mobile banking platform with remote capture so you can deposit checks from anywhere. Offline, online, no line. Bank Pacific. Where others put branches, we place roots, and we're rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Leah Dunca from Security Title here with a little information about trusts. A trust is a legal entity capable of owning property. It can protect property from issues such as lawsuits or divorce and can be used to distribute property and avoid probate. Many trusts start as revocable but become irrevocable when the initial trustees die. Work with your estate planning attorney to see if a trust is a good fit for your family property. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie is brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Pounding on the table. Yeah. Okay, so I like starting this show with a respectful reading of the Second Amendment because it's really what the show is all about. Individual freedom, the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, conservatism, tradition, etc. If you are a wokester, if you are a woke individual, much of what you hear on Tall Tales will make you uncomfortable. All the more reason that you should stay tuned because it'll be a learning experience for you. I have determined through extensive research that wokeism is curable. It is not an incurable malady. So a few doses of conservatism might put you on the right track. Okay, let's go to Demi Ikletny. And they're telling us the clock is ticking on education. Jose, you've got a good sound effect for that one. The clock is ticking on education. Can you turn it up a little bit? There we go. Yeah. The clock is ticking on education. September has never loomed so heavy over a community as this September will. How about September 2001? That was kind of a rough September, wasn't it? Why? The federal unemployment program will end, and thousands of folks on the program will be left without financial benefit. Where's that 19th floor sound effect? Let me try this again. The federal unemployment program will end, and thousands of folks on the program will be left without the financial benefit. Folks who haven't secured jobs by then will be in tense competition for jobs with others who are waiting for the PUA program to end. The other reality is that if schools are not open with face-to-face learning, there is another layer of workforce that won't be able to return to work even if they wanted to. Parents, especially of young children, have become homeschool instructors for a hybrid online educational program that doesn't work very well at admission by public school administrators. The Wuhan virus pandemic forced the island to quickly shut down without warning. The school system was not set up to manage an online education program. Even with its opening last year, the public education system did its best it could, but significant gaps exist. The island school system received hundreds of millions of dollars to create a safe educational environment for its students through the pandemic. What it chooses to do this next year is key to our economic recovery. School, at least the elementary and middle school level, needs to return to the classrooms. If not, parents can't return to the workforce. Superintendent John Fernandez toured the schools to determine if they have the physical capacity to properly support social distance students. This seems to be the biggest issue. If we can't fit our students in current classroom sizes, then we need to look at facilities to rent that can accommodate those needs. We also need to think outside the box. Most private schools, if not all, have been in face-to-face sessions since it was allowed in January. And you know, Jose, I've seen the statistics, and the rate of infection of the Wuhan virus in private schools is just, it's just the same as everybody else. So why didn't we do the same thing? DOE could reach out and ask private school for capacity. They might be able to safely accommodate additional students. Why not? It also would help private schools that have experienced revenue losses during the past year. The public school system also might look at contracting with nationally accredited homeschool programs for high school students who can work independently for 1 year. These programs are structured and instructors are fully trained in virtual education. That's a pretty good idea. You know, the old saying, if you turned an infinite number of monkeys loose and an infinite number of typewriters and gave them an infinite amount of time, they would type all the great books. So even the Daily News is capable of having good ideas once in a while.
It's virtually an education.
Yeah. Bottom line is students need to be in school so parents can be at work. Our overcrowded public classrooms and the need for more schools won't be solved by the start of next year. The school system needs to look at creative ideas to meet our students' needs. The clock is ticking. Let me wrap this up again. The school system needs to look at creative ideas to meet our students' needs. The clock is ticking. Very good, everybody.
I lost the key. Had to wind it up.
Okay, let's go on to the Post.
We went from Meet the Press to 60 Minutes.
Yeah, Meet the Press, 60 Minutes, Tall Tales is better than either one of them. I discovered last night, when I turn the TV on, I default to Channel 20, Fox News, if I see if there's anything else worth watching, and there usually isn't.
No.
And I noticed that 60 Minutes is on Monday nights. I don't even care what they're talking about anymore. They have so disgraced themselves.
Even as a kid, I used to want to watch it.
Yeah.
Now I can't.
Not anymore. All right, so here's the post. GPA will help people pay their overdue bills. No, they're not going to help people pay their overdue bills. Not even close. But the deadline is June 1. In about 2 weeks, thousands of residents and businesses could face disconnection of water services or possibly a power bill that's too large for them to afford. The Waterworks Authority and the Power Authority announced how they're dealing with delinquent accounts, which have remained connected as the agencies have tried to work with residents. Thousands of Guamanians have lost. No, we didn't know that. Let's dwell on the obvious here. We're sure that many of those ratepayers appreciate the grace extended to them during these hard times. However, hopefully they will reach out to the agencies to create payment plans that work with their budgets. There's nothing tougher than trying to figure out which necessity to pay for this month: power, water, food, rent or mortgage, or car payment or gas. And there's the old dodge where you take the water bill and you write out a check to the gas company and send it along with the water bill to the water company, and you do the same with the gas company, and they get it, and they'll send you a nice letter back. Oh, sorry, but you sent us the wrong check. I'm sure this is not. You buy yourself an extra week that way, right?
It's still 3 separate bills.
Yeah. Okay. For many working families, this was a challenge even before the pandemic. If one or both paychecks were impacted, the struggle could be that much harder. Both the Waterworks and Power Authority show that between 3,000 and 4,000 residents and businesses have delinquent accounts. GPA is offering to roll anyone with more than $25 overdue balance into a payment plan, which sounds to us like the balance would essentially be divided and applied to upcoming bills for the next 2 months or so. This sounds okay unless you're facing a bill of, say, $900. Now, I understand that as rates go up, consumption of electricity actually goes down. Some people will consciously stop using as much electricity. So that's got to be the solution here for some of these unfortunate folks, that, their regular power bill is going to have to be paid, plus they got to go back and pay an installment on the arrearage. So I expect that, if you look at the economics of this thing, I'm generally not in favor of ex gratia payments from the government to private citizens, freebies. I'm ordinarily not in favor of the government extending credit to people even when they can't pay. Just a matter of principle. Remember, I'm the one that's looking for an effective, efficient government operating within the rules of law, providing basic government services at a break-even or better level. So I'm not usually too crazy about this, but if you're sitting down here and looking at the economics of it, one of the things that businessmen will tell you, it's easier to keep the customer that you got than to lose him and go out and find another customer, especially for electricity. So it's probably better for the bottom line to string people along, even though they're not paying their full bill, than to disconnect them. And then, of course, The other side of it is, as these bills increase, the consumption goes down. So I would hope that the finance folks at the Power Authority are taking all these things into consideration as they're dealing with this, that it's better perhaps to string people along over a long period of time than basically flush them out of the system. Okay, back to the editorial. Luckily, GPA is offering ratepayers an opportunity to create a payment plan that better fits their budgets if they make those arrangements by June 1. GWA is basically asking ratepayers to either pay their balance or create a payment plan with them by June 1 or face disconnection. Here's another consideration. Disconnecting power is not so hard. I think they may actually be able to disconnect power remotely. For water, you got to send it, it probably costs you, in direct labor costs, it probably costs you close to $100 to disconnect somebody.
We got new meters for both water and power, but I think power is the only one that has the remote access.
Yeah, because you got to actually go out and, somebody got to go out and turn that valve off, right? Yeah. The agencies are also doing outreach activities with the community. There's one Wednesday, May 19th at the Barragata Community Center. People can learn more about what the agencies are doing and find out what they can do to stave off disconnections, especially if they're in a particularly tough situation where they haven't been able to find a job. Whatever the situation, it sounds like the agencies are willing to work with ratepayers, so it's worth the call. And kudos to these agencies for doing their part to help during this pandemic. Now, I don't know if I'm going to give them kudos on that one. I will give them kudos if what I just addressed is motivating them. In other words, they have a utility to run. They know that they aren't going to make any money by going out and cutting people off. But I hope that what they're doing is not inspired by some sense of charity or disinterested generosity. Charity is a wonderful thing, not from a government agency.
They've privatized the collection department, though. The Corleone family's taken over.
Yeah, and you know what group on the island is really in favor of that?
No.
Orthopedic surgeons.
Okay.
Think of all those broken kneecaps that are going to have to be repaired. All right, so we got the, we have completed Zemi Ikotny. It is time now to go to the card. And this is what I got on the card for today. I've got Dobbs versus Jackson Women's Health Organization. Now, all you anti-abortion folks, and I suppose even you pro-abortion folks, ought to pay particularly attention to this one because this is really, really a biggie. And then I've got Underwood versus Tina, but in the process of going to Underwood versus Tina, I kind of got to reflect on Tall Tales versus Tina, Paul Zerzan versus Separatists, even Russians versus insular cases, because it's all part of the same package, more or less. I've got the Department of Defense versus Protehe Latexan. You know how Protehe Latexan has always been complaining about the Department of Defense. Well, this time the Department of Defense really did a dirty deal on him, but I'll get to that. I've got Helen Middlebrook versus Rochelle Walensky. Helen Middlebrook writes a column for the Daily News, kind of giving you a grandma's perspective of what's going on. And I read it every week. It's quite often entertaining. There's quite often a lot of wisdom involved. So this time around, I cast it. It is Helen Middlebrook versus Rachel Walensky. Then I've got Lassia Casil versus Reality. This one has the potential of being around for a long, long time. And I've got David Lebowski versus MDs versus doctors. Bavacqua versus the CNMI. Ken versus politicals. AMA, the American Medical Association versus politicians. The American Medical Association has gone woke. If you haven't seen that on the net, they have gone 100% woke. So the next time you go to your primary care physician and he says, I'm going to have to refer you to a fill-in-the-blank specialist, make sure you ask your primary care the right questions. Is he a person? Is he a BIPOC? Is he black or a person of color? What is his gender preference? You make sure you find out all of this stuff, because if the answer isn't correct, don't go to that doctor.
Does he kneel in a white coat?
Does he kneel in a white coat at Skinner Plaza? If not, if he's not woke, and if he doesn't represent diversity, ask your primary care physician for another doctor, and don't let him put you off, with this white supremacist talk about whether or not the doctor is a good doctor. That's not important. Okay, and I've still got Ben Shapiro versus Wokesters and BLM versus the United States on the card. Dobbs versus Jackson's Women's Health. The easy way to describe this item is that the Supreme Court granted cert on an abortion case. Now, your regular listeners know what I mean when I say the Supreme Court granted cert. A case was decided in a lower court. Which court was it? I don't remember. It's not that big a deal. From the South, and the losing party, a gentleman named Dobbs, filed a petition for a writ of certiorari with the U.S. Supreme Court, and the writ was granted, which means that 4 justices on the Supreme Court said, we want to hear this appeal. Dobbs versus Jackson's Women's Health Organization. And here's what my favorite commentator, Jonathan Turley, says. The case could prove a turning point for the court on reproductive rights. And I like the guy. Come on, Jonathan. The Mississippi law at issue banned abortions after 15 weeks, 7 weeks earlier than past laws passing constitutional muster. So up until now, 22 weeks was the dividing line. State legislators have been passing laws like torpedoes on the water, and this one just hit with a 6-3 conservative court. The decision comes a year after pro-choice groups were able to secure a plurality decision in June Medical Services versus Russo. That victory was attained only because Ruth Bader Ginsburg was still on the court, and Chief Justice John Roberts wrote a concurrence in the result. That's how the liberals, the lefties, won June Medical Services versus Russo. However, the Roberts concurrence was also concerning for pro-choice, for pro-abortion advocates. He only voted with his liberal colleagues because he felt bound by stare decisis to follow the 2016 decision in Whole Women's Health versus Hellerstedt that addressed a virtually identical law. Now, stare decisis. Stare decisis means that we follow the precedent established by the court. Once the court rules on a particular issue, there is a strong tendency to stay on that same legal track. And ordinarily, it takes a lot to get the courts to overrule a case that would, be contrary to the doctrine of stare decisis. And John Roberts wants you to think that he's all into stare decisis. And I've mentioned before that John Roberts, we thought he was a conservative, but when he became Chief Justice, he became an institutionalist. So if you follow his cases, his decisions, and his actions, it seems that the major concern is that the Supreme Court always appear in a favorable light. He publicly said there are no Democrat justices, there are no Republican justices. Let me take a short break, and I'll come back to the Supreme Court.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
So Roberts is an institutionalist, and he wants people to think that the court is not a political organization, that, as he said in his confirmation hearing, he calls the balls and strikes. He doesn't invent the rules of the game. But he does, because my sense, and I can only speculate on this, and when the Obamacare case before the Supreme Court, the test was what power did the Congress have to enact a law that basically got into things that are this business of the states. Medical care is personal. And the idea was that it was supposed to be the commerce power that allowed the court to do that. But Roberts went along with the conservatives. No, the Commerce Clause doesn't reach that far. But then he invented something. He almost made something up. He said the penalty that uninsured people pay is actually a tax. And the Congress's power to tax is basically unlimited. So I see how he got there, and that, of course, sustained Obamacare, but my speculation is this. He didn't want the public to think, yeah, Democrat president, public health law, Republican majority on the Supreme Court. Of course they're going to overrule it. They don't care about the law. So he invented this device so that he could rule with the lefties on the court and sustain Obamacare, so that his legacy is going to be John Roberts was great for the court. He was not a politician. He was a jurist through and through. That's just my suspicion. And that certainly squares with this idea that he went along with the liberals on June Medical Services versus Russo because he was following stare decisis. Okay. And then on that matter, Roberts felt that the record did not allow him the flexibility found by his four conservative colleagues voting in favor of the state law. Going on, the concern for pro-choice groups is that Roberts noted in this concurrence, quote, no one asks the court to reassess the constitutional validity of the undue burden standard. So Roberts put this in his opinion. And, as a general principle, the court only addresses issues brought before it. And he said, you guys didn't bring this issue before the court, but wink, wink, here's something you might want to think about. And the case that we cited there, actually the case that establishes the undue burden, as far as I can remember, is Planned Parenthood versus Casey, that actually overruled Roe versus Wade. It made Roe versus Wade a nullity with its 3 trimesters, et cetera. And it basically said that until the child can survive outside the mother's body, abortion is okay. Now, I don't know if the undue burden came from there or later cases, but the undue burden rule is this, that a woman has a constitutional right to an abortion, but states can pass legislation respecting the value of life and regulating, providing for good medical care, so long as what they do does not constitute an undue burden on a woman's getting an abortion. So I'll give you a ridiculous example. A woman, a state law that said any woman who wants to get an abortion must come to the state capitol and fill out some forms in the office of the chief medical examiner. That would be an undue burden. Making a woman fill out some forms? Probably not. So Roberts, by this, when you used to play basketball, Jose, the coach would tell you, Jose, don't telegraph your passes. Remember that?
That telegraph?
Yeah.
Yeah. Back in my dunking days, he used to tell me to stop doing that.
Yeah, so...
Show your cards is what he means, right?
Yeah. Well, if you're telegraphing your passes, you're kind of looking at the guy you're going to pass to, and you're making a facial expression so the defense can see that and swoop in and cause a turnover, right? Well, John Roberts here actually telegraphed his pass when he said, no one asks the court to assess the constitutional validity of the undue burden standard. So you can bet that there'll be a lot of briefing on this Dobbs case on the undue burden standard. Okay, so going on with Turley's column here, this case could afford such a review. The law was blocked by the United States Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit, okay. Obviously, all eyes will be on Justice Amy Coney Barrett because she's so good looking. No, that's not the reason all eyes will be on her. That was Ruth Bader Ginsburg. Obviously, all eyes will be on Justice Amy Coney Barrett, who, as an academic, wrote extensively on what she saw as flaws in the Roe progeny. As I wrote at the time, Barrett was the ultimate deliverable for the pro-life movement by former President Donald Trump, who had the election stolen from him. In confirmation, Judge Barrett had an interesting exchange with Senator Amy Klobuchar. How do you pronounce that name? Klobuchar. Klobuchar, yeah. Minnesota, man. Klobuchar, in which she identified Brown versus Board of Education as a super precedent. However, when pushed on Roe, Barrett said, I'm answering a lot of questions about Roe, which I think indicates that Roe doesn't fall into that category. That is, that it's a super precedent, meaning that she wouldn't, sort of telegraphing her thoughts that, maybe stare decisis won't hold me back. So when she said, I'm answering a lot of questions about Roe, which I think indicates that Roe doesn't fall into that category, an audible gulp came from the pro-choice groups. Whoa. Oh. Yeah. What is also notable is that this case will be heard in October and could be decided by June 2022. Any major change in the abortion standards would then occur before the 2022 election for the control of Congress. It could also rekindle demands on the left to pack the Supreme Court. And, if Amy rules with the anti-aborts, you could bet that the idea of packing the Supreme Court will be an election issue for the Congress. And it's, of course, exactly what you expect from Democrats. If you can't win under the rules, change the rules. All right, so that's.
We had a call to
Yeah.
clarify. The last name is Klobuchar.
Klobuchar.
Short, yeah, SH instead of CH.
Okay, let me try that again here. Let's see, Senator Amy Klobuchar. Did I get it right? Amy Klobuchar.
Shar.
Klobuchar. I
Sounds-
think for Tall Tales it's going to be...
Sounds close.
It's going to be Klobuchar. All right. Thank the person who called. So that's the first item on the card. Next item on the card is Underwood versus Tina. It looks like I got somebody waiting in the green room. I probably ought to accommodate him before I get into Underwood versus Tina. That's another Joe. You're early today, another Joe.
So this 21st, there's going to be, I think, an update regarding the lawsuit to provide to abortion, the abortion pills. The ACLU is assisting to sue the government of Guam officials. So I think we're going to hear an update. And I'm not sure if I understand it completely. Are they going to change this Judge Kennedy from the CNOI?
She is not the judge. She is the magistrate.
Magistrate.
So the way the district court operates quite often, the magistrate entertains a motion, rules on the motion, and gives it to the district judge, Francis Gatewood. Counsel have the opportunity to agree or disagree with the magistrate's decision, and then Judge Gatewood makes the final decision. But what do you mean by update, another Joe?
I mean, I'm not really familiar with the whole, the process. I know there's different things occurring on different dates. I'm just trying to figure out if I'm guessing that this whole idea that it's still being decided on whether it's a reasonable burden. That's the thing that keeps coming up. Reasonable burden to require was it the face-to-face or the waiting period?
Yeah.
I'm not sure exactly what it is.
Whether or not requiring the woman to sit down with someone who gives her the papers and explains the papers to her, whether or not that's an undue burden, and that ties right into the first item on the card, doesn't it?
So it sounds like it's related to all the other cases stateside.
Of course, the way the courts work, when there's an issue and they decide a case, then it becomes judicial precedent, and lawyers will talk about that precedent in terms of the name of the case in which it was decided. So that's why Curley. Where did I put that case here?
It's not coincidence that they figured. I guess they figured that Guam would be a jurisdiction that would be considered a weak weak link, so to speak, that they could attack.
The ACLU, yeah, I suspect, yeah.
And doing so, they're going to create a huge mess for us to have to clean up after, because these are human beings. So we're going to have to figure out how do we respectfully, if they allow for even increasing the number of because they don't give the opportunity to let the pregnant mother, the pregnant woman, have options that are given to her, provided that other than just getting, terminating the pregnancy.
Well, let me clue you in here. Here's the game. The anti-abortion folks stay up all night long figuring, how can we make it more difficult for a woman to get an abortion and not cross the undue burden line? In other words, the anti-abortion folks are slowly chipping away at Roe versus Wade. The pro-abortion folks, of course, oppose those things as hard as they possibly can. And that's what's going on with this case. So as far as the ACLU is concerned, if they could knock out that personal appearance in front of a doctor, that would just, for them, it would just be another notch in their belt. They get a little earned media out of it. They could do a little bit more virtue signaling, etc. But it wouldn't really change abortion in the United States very much. I suspect that it does have an impact here. I suspect that there were women who were contemplating an abortion that didn't want to go through that, or after they went through it, changed their mind. So, but the dynamics are that this is the way the battle is carried out between the pro-abortions and the anti-abortions, trying to get as close to the undue burden line as they can.
And Uncle Bob, they're making it part of the new woke culture, right? For the younger generation, especially, it's not woke if you don't make it convenient for the younger generation ladies to have abortion, termination of pregnancy at will.
If you don't favor abortion on demand at any time in any stage of the pregnancy, then as Joe Biden would say, you ain't woke.
Oh man, Uncle Bob, this requires some divine intervention and prayer. All right, Uncle Bob, thanks for your time. Appreciate it.
Okay, another Joe. All right, so let's see, where am I here? Yeah, I got Underwood versus Tina. And I went through, once again, reminding everyone that Downs versus Bidwell is the case that people are talking about when they say the insular cases. There are as many as 22 insular cases, but Downs is the one they're talking about because Downs has a set of words that Ann Paris Hattori used as a straight line on a national comedy show. Everybody seizes on that and says the insular cases are racist. And I'm here to tell you, no, that's wrong. If you hear someone saying the insular cases are racist, he either doesn't know and he's telling you because he doesn't know, or he does know and he's lying to you. It's one of the two. No! Yeah. And second, the insular cases, we could change the insular cases by a one-syllable amendment to our Organic Act. Here is Section 1421A of our Organic Act. Guam is declared to be an unincorporated territory of the United States, and the capital and seat of government thereof shall be located at Agana, Guam. If we just crossed out the un, so that it read Guam is declared to be an incorporated territory, then Downs is irrelevant because Guam becomes a part of the United States. It's not a pertinent to the United States. It's part of the United States, and the Constitution would apply to Guam ex proprio vigere, of its own force. But nobody wants to talk about that because it's no fun. You can't talk about racism and all the stuff that's really fun to talk about. And also, I want you to remember one, Downs is not a racist case. Downs is what people mean what they mean when they're talking about the insular cases. I also want you to remember that the worst possible thing that could happen to us would be if the Supreme Court overruled Downs versus Bidwell and said, we made a mistake. The Constitution automatically applies to conquered territories as soon as the peace treaty is signed. Therefore, the Constitution applies to Guam, Puerto Rico, it's too late for the Philippines, Guam, Puerto Rico, and actually American Samoa also, and the U.S. Virgin Islands. So if that happened, then the uniformity clause would apply. We would lose our duty-free status. We'd lose our mirror image income tax, and we'd be sending all of our income tax to the U.S. Treasury. We would lose our qualifying certificates, and we'd lose Section 30 money. So this whole thing, this whole charade that Tina is putting on is exactly that. It's a charade. All right, let me take a short break here, and I'll come back to Underwood versus Tina.
Need to finish the job or start one the right way? Get the right stuff at East West Rental Center. You can switch to easy mode using industrial strength equipment. With years of experience helping builders, East West Rental gives you exactly what you need. Tools for landscaping, concrete, lifts, trucks, tables, tents, chairs, water blasters, excavators, forklifts, air compressors, and more. Call East West Rental Center at 646-1463 or visit them in Upper Tumont. Open Monday to Saturday from 7 to 5, Sundays 8 to 5.
All dads should own a Traeger. And this Father's Day, you can win a Traeger smoker grill for your dad and feast on flavorful wood-fire crafted meals. Cooked with a flip of a switch. Cook low and slow or high and fast with digital precision on your Traeger pellet grill. Purchase $35 or more in fuel at 76 Circle K and enter to win. Gas up today and join Circle K's Father's Day package giveaway. A Traeger smoker grill, a canopy, a cooler full of meat, and 2 cases of Bud or Bud Light are up for grabs only at Circle K. Conditions apply. Visit 76circlekguam.com.
Okay, so here we are back on Tall Tales here with Underwood versus Tina, but I want to lay a foundation here. Jose reminded me of something yesterday, which was that on October 28th of 2018, the Daily News ran a letter to the editor that reads, Klitzkie, PDN editorial wrong about insular cases voting rights. Now, I want to go through this just to show you that it's much easier for people to believe a lie they've heard 1,000 times than the fact they just heard. And the reason that the Tinas of the world keep beating the same drum is because the Daily News and its performance. So I'm just going to go through my letter briefly, and then I'll read the editorial that prompted it, and you'll see exactly what I mean. So I start out by saying, in response to a specific Daily News editorial from October 12, the punchline from a TV comedy show is a rather shallow foundation upon which to build an editorial dealing with a serious subject. This glaring false statement was uttered by Guam historian Ann Paris-Hattori on the TV show called Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. You know how that goes, right? You know what she said, etc. And then I go and I explained Downs versus Bidwell, bananas, Puerto Rico Organic Act, everything that our international radio listening audience of tailgaters already knows, and the holding of the case. And then I once again summarized, saying Downs dealt with custom duties, not voting, and not with the inapplicability of the Constitution in Puerto Rico due to the presence of, quote, alien races there is. And that was Hattori's big lie. The alien races wordage is obiter dictum, doesn't apply to Puerto Rico, Cuba, Philippines, or Guam, and is stated only hypothetically. Inability of residents of the territories to vote does not stem from the insular cases, but from the design of the American Republic, where civil rights have a national dimension, but political rights arise from residents in one of the 50 states. Voting rights in national elections is not unavailable because of the insular cases. And let's see. I wound up by saying this. Numerous myths sounding in identity politics. For instance, we are second-class citizens. We are statutory, not constitutional citizens. Because of the insular cases, we can't vote for president. There are only 3 options for decolonization of the island. Gov Guam is working toward decolonization, and the one the Daily News just published, given the clearly racist language and logic, it's disturbing that voting rights continue to be denied based on the insular cases. All of those things circulate. This is a crucial time in the political development of Guam, given that we live in a time when serious discussions concerning nationalism, statehood, self-determination, patriotism, national defense, self-government, racism, decolonization, home rule, hegemony, etc., require discussion. None of us is well served by the mythic distractions grounded in identity politics. I have higher hopes for the Daily News, and so far my higher hopes are only that. Okay, this is the editorial that the Daily News wrote on October 8 of 2018. Earlier this week, the Supreme Court decided not to review a lower court's decision in Segovia versus the United States, a voting rights case involving residents of the territories. That's the one dealing with American Samoa, if I recall correctly. The lawsuit was filed by Equally American, a group headed by civil rights attorney, former Guam resident, and duty demagogue Neil Weir. In this case, the group represents veterans and others living in Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. Oh, okay, this is the Ucava case, who would be able to vote for president by absentee vote from Illinois if they lived in other territories or in foreign countries. So the bitch here is that the law doesn't treat Guam like a foreign country. The group should be applauded for its efforts to establish federal voting rights for territories. But voting rights to be meaningful, they should be granted to all eligible adult males in territories, much like the 23rd Amendment grants voting rights to citizens residing in the District of Columbia. D.C. residents who vote for president are represented by electors in the Electoral College. Guam residents who cast ballots for president have no such representation. The right to cast a meaningful vote should not be limited to military veterans or those who have lived in other states. In August 2016, a federal judge ruled that former Illinois residents in the Segovia case did not have a right to cast absentee ballot in that state. The judge said there is no fundamental right to vote in the territories, citing U.S. Supreme Court decisions from 1901 called the insular cases.
Nope.
Yeah. In one of those cases, Downs versus Bidwell, the Supreme Court stated, and here we go again, and Hattori strikes again, if those possessions, and I'm not going to read it again because you know it's BS, and I've explained it, I think, rather clearly yesterday and the day before. Okay, then the editorial goes on to say, given the clearly racist language and logic, It's disturbing that voting rights continue to be denied based on the insular cases. Just wrong. Just dead wrong. It's time for citizens in the territories to be able to vote for president, not through an absentee ballot in a state, but in our own communities, which have been part of the United States for over 100 years. So once again, here's the Daily News. Given the clearly racist language and logic, it's disturbing that voting rights continue to be denied based on the insular cases. Let me see who's in the green room here. It's Jim. Jim, I'll pick you up right after the big halftime show if you want to hang on, or if you want to hang up and call back, I'll get to you right after the halftime.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
More Middle East turmoil. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. The Israeli Defense Force reports they have shot down a drone over their border with Jordan, without saying from where or by whom they believe the drone was launched. Israel launched more airstrikes Monday in retaliation for rockets fired from the Gaza Strip.
Some diplomats and congressional Democrats are calling on the White House to demand a ceasefire. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is traveling in Europe and addressed reporters' questions in Copenhagen.
Israel has the right to defend itself. There is no equivalence between a terrorist group indiscriminately firing rockets at civilians and a country defending its people from those attacks.
Blinken added that Israel, as a democracy, has an extra burden to do everything possible to avoid civilian casualties.
Fox's Rich Edson at the State Department. President Biden says when the new vaccination numbers come out later today, they'll show that 60% of Americans have received at least one dose of the coronavirus vaccine. And he says for the first time since the pandemic began, deaths are down in all 50 states. And the president will soon announce details of a plan to share the vaccine worldwide.
These are vaccinations and vaccines that are authorized to be put in arms of Americans. And by the end of June, when we will have taken delivery of enough of such vaccines to protect everyone in the United States will share at least 20 million of those doses, that extra supply, with other countries.
The president says America won't be fully safe until the pandemic is under control globally. Louisiana's Governor John Bel Edwards has declared a state of emergency for southwest Louisiana. Drenching rains triggering flooding. South Lake Charles recording 15 inches of rain in just over 12 hours. India's Navy says it has rescued 177 people from two barges off the coast of Mumbai. One of them sank in a tropical cyclone. The other set adrift. There are more than 200 people still in jeopardy. America is listening to Fox News.
Do you dread waiting in those long, inconvenient lines? That's why you won't find them at Bank Pacific. We're back to our pre-COVID Monday to Saturday hours with all of our branches open. You know, that where others put branches, we place roots thing. And if you don't want to come to the bank, we have MyCloud Banking through which you can go to the bank on any of your devices, including through our new cool mobile banking platform with a remote capture so you can deposit checks from anywhere. Offline, online, no line. Bank Pacific. Where others put branches, we place roots and rooting for you. Member FDIC.
Leah Dunca from Security Title here with a little information about trusts. A trust is a legal entity capable of owning property. It can protect property from issues such as lawsuits or divorce and can be used to distribute property and avoid probate. Many trusts start as revocable but become irrevocable when the initial trustees die. Work with your estate planning attorney to see if a trust is a good fit for your family property. Call the professionals at Security Title. We are here to help.
Out of a job, a bridge inspector who failed to catch a major structural flaw in a highway bridge over the Mississippi.
The Arkansas Department of Transportation reports an inspector who failed to see a crack on an interstate bridge that forced the closure of the span has been fired. A drone discovered the crack on the bridge spanning the Mississippi between Arkansas and Tennessee, but the DOT says the inspector, who hasn't been identified, didn't note the break in the most recent report. The 6-lane Interstate 40 bridge was shut down last week after the fracture was discovered. Traffic is being rerouted to another span about 3 miles away. It's not known how long it will take to make the repairs needed before the bridge is reopened. Rich Dennison, Fox News.
2 Maryland sheriff's deputies are in serious condition after being shot Monday afternoon in suburban Washington, D.C., where they'd been called to a home. A man was reported having a mental health episode there. As they approached the room, the man opened the door and started shooting at them. He was later found dead from a gunshot wound. Not clear yet whether it was self-inflicted or from the deputy's return fire. Add another to the list of jobs facing a shortage of people who will do them.
Planes may be faster, trains may be cheaper, but when it comes to getting freight from point A to point B, trucks do most of the work. And the shortage of qualified people to drive them is now hitting home. Sisu Energy in Texas is now offering to pay experienced drivers $14,000 a week. Because, as CEO Jim Grundy tells Fox Business, they just can't find enough drivers.
We have folks making $300,000 to $400,000 net a year driving a tractor trailer in their mid-20s with college degrees.
The trucking industry claims there are about 60,000 drivers short. With an aging driver base, retirements, others lost to COVID, and the economy now heating up, a perfect storm is gathering to make getting what we need harder and more expensive. In Chicago, I'm Jeff Flock, Fox News.
And I'm Jack Callahan. This is Fox News.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
A homeowner's policy protects much more than just your house. It also protects you against claims from someone being hurt on your property. If a visitor is injured at your place, how much are you covered for? The smart thing to do is get the answer today.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Busy week? Mezcla Bistro in Tumon has you covered. Let us take the worries out of your dinner meal planning. Check out our daily specials or enjoy some of your local favorites. Plus, receive a free kids meal with each adult dinner entree purchased Monday through Thursday. Call 969-2652 for more information or to make a reservation at the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon. And don't forget, Jack Larimer is live every Saturday night. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro, a true taste of Guam.
Hey! Big news! Now you can listen to The Point on radio.com. And radio.com gives you so much more. Local news stations give you what's going on in your community. Get national news from CBS, CNN, or Fox News Radio. Take a break with one of the hundreds of music, sports, and talk stations. Love podcasts? Radio.com has thousands of true crime, comedy, kids and family podcasts, and more. Listen anytime, anywhere. On your PC, smart speakers, and a variety of connected devices. Or download the radio.com app now from the App Store or Google Play.
Okay, another another tremendous halftime show here brought by the sponsors of Tall Tales. I know you enjoyed it. Going back just for a second to the Daily News, when the editorial board of a daily newspaper can put out tripe like I just read, it shows you that we have a real problem here in figuring out what's really going on, because we ought to be able to depend on newspapers to give us straight scoop, good information in a timely, accurate fashion. And this is just so wrong on so many levels. Even if I would sign up for their racist view of Downs versus Bidwell, it has absolutely nothing to do with voting. If the Supreme Court tomorrow overruled Downs versus Bidwell, we wouldn't be voting next November. It's just the way the country is structured. So I brought this back once again to show you how difficult it is to get the real truth out into the public when you got to work against not only the separatists, but against one of our daily newspapers. And the fact that, just on, was it Saturday, the current publisher of a newspaper repeated the same old crap.
And she blamed her Guam education.
She did. She blamed her Guam
In
education.
so many words.
Yeah, I guess she wasn't able to read well enough to read the letter to the editor that I sent her, which ought to at least caution her a little bit, but apparently it didn't. Okay, we got a caller named Jim on the line who wants to talk about this matter. Good afternoon, Jim.
Hello, the word of the day, ethics. Now, Queen Bee Lou talks a good game about ethics and, trying to stop corruption. But where is the town hall meetings? When does she come into the communities and talk about these specific issues instead of her staged media events where you hear about her after the fact, or you hear that she went somewhere like a hospital or somewhere, she cut some ribbons. But what about getting to the heart of the matters, the heart of the problems that affect the people? What about the ethics and really caring about stopping the corruption and the nepotism and these other things that continue to be recycled on this island? When is this going to change? Is it all going to be smoke and mirrors, or when are we going to get to the heart?
I could tell you how to settle the uprising between the Palestinians and the Israelis and that's going on in Israel right now. I could solve that faster than I could answer your questions, which I realize are rhetorical, Jim.
Yeah, I just want to get to the meat of the issues, facing the people here, and it's like we hear about it time after time, and she brings it up as a catchphrase, ethics and dealing with corruption, but it's like an afterthought to them in the administration.
She was so ethical that she lured the legislature into an unethical, illegal session so she could chat with them behind closed doors. They probably spent a lot of time after they locked the media out talking about ethics, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the logical is illogical and vice versa. It gets to the point where they believe the baloney she's selling, and they don't know right from wrong. It's like, when does it end?
Good points, Jim.
Okay, thank you.
I'm glad I gave you a chance to get that off your chest. I could tell you were really anxious. Okay. All right, nice talking to you, Jim. Okay, so Jim on ethics. So back again to Underwood versus Tina. And I read that piece there just to provide some, putting the condiments out on the table before I serve the main course. And this is an article that basically is built on Robert Underwood and Michael Bavacqua, and is titled "Insular Cases a Step, but Deeper Issues Remain for Guam." House of Representatives Resolution 279 decrying the race-based Supreme Court rulings known as the insular cases used to deny equal rights to the territory was heard before Congress on May 13th. Well, given the publisher's understanding of what's going on, this is pretty consistent. She doesn't know, so why should they know? Vice Speaker Tina Munya Barnes put forth her own resolution in the 36th legislature in support of 279 and testified in support of the measure during the congressional hearing. But according to Michael Lujan Bavacqua, chair of the Self-Determination Commission's Independence Task Force, Guam was still a ways from a solution. He was positive about the resolution.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Uh-huh.
That Independence Commission, that's a government commission?
There is the Self-Determination Commission.
Okay.
It has appointed 3 task forces: independence, free association, and statehood. And each each task force has a chairman.
Got it. Yeah.
Bavacqua, of course, is chairman of the independence, which is basically all there is. You know, there's a chairman for the statehood commission, but bet you dollars to donuts you don't know who it is. And the same with free association. They are non-participants. And Melvin Wanpat likes it that way because he is so obviously a separatist. So that's why I oftentimes refer to it not as the Commission on Self-Determination, but as the Commission on Chamorro Independence, because that's what it really is. Okay, so Bavacqua. Michael Bavacqua, chair of the Self-Determination Commission's Independence Task Force. Guam was still a ways from solution. He was positive about the resolution, but said attacking the race-based nature of the cases wasn't as productive as it might seem. But he really liked it, obviously, right? The insular cases used very racist ideas to justify things that are already in the U.S. Constitution. He is a very good reader. He's able to read things that weren't even in the case, which are not racially necessarily motivated, he said. Even if you struck down the insular cases, you still have the territorial clause of the United States, which means Congress still gets to decide whatever it wants. Well, if the insular cases, if Downs went down, we would be in the same position that Hawaii was. We would be an incorporated territory of the United States. People would be citizens by birth, subject to the draft, income tax goes to Washington, etc. They wouldn't have the ability to vote for national officers, but other than that, they wouldn't be any different from anybody in the 50 states. Bavacqua said the United States needs to not just reckon with the fact that people said racist things in the past, but reckon with the idea that the United States doesn't empower the people in its territories to make their own choices. Now, people in the territories don't get a chance to make their own choices. Everything, all of our laws, all of our rules, regs, budgets, everything comes from Washington. We have nothing at all that resembles home rule.
And pay no attention to what the Lieutenant Governor of Samoa says.
Exactly. Yeah, so we have that. And we've had the ability to enact our own Constitution for 40 years, and we didn't do that. And we've had our ability to create our own tax law since 1986. We never did that. And we have complete self-rule here on the island. Now we go on to the deeper issue, according to the Daily News. Robert Underwood, former UOG president and former Guam delegate, agreed with denouncing the racist. See, this is the common thread that brings everybody together. Everybody wants to denounce that. And of course, it's so good for virtue signaling, and it's so dangerous not to, you know. So here's a rap that Bavacqua and Underwood could start. You know, Tall Tales, you know that guy Klitzkie? He's a racist. Is he really? Yeah. He said the insular cases aren't racist. So he must be a racist. Because everybody knows that the insular cases are racist. So when he defends the insular cases, that tells you he's a racist. This is the dynamic of what's going on here.
It's like we have a lot of Don Quixotes on island.
Well, it's kind of like the example I used the other day. Saying that the insular cases aren't racist is like coming out and publicly trying to defend incest. Incest is okay so long as you keep it in the family. Where is that snare drum of yours, Jose? Yeah. But that's what he said. You know, it's good that we really zero in on this racist stuff because it doesn't mean a damn thing, right? Underwood agreed with denouncing the racism of the case, but said the deeper issue was the denial of the ability of the territories to participate in the democratic process by having voting representation in Congress. Now, I agree with that. We don't have a voting rep in Congress, and the only way we can have a voting rep in Congress is what that guy who testified on the hearing told us. You got to amend the Constitution. Become a state or amend the Constitution. Neither one of those, I think, is within the realm of possibility. So that's correct. Now, my bounce off that is this. We don't have a voting delegate in Congress, but we do have a delegate who gets all of the perks that a congressman does. He's got an office in the Longworth building. You saw a picture of it in the paper, or you've seen pictures of it in the paper, just like every other congressman. He's got a staff. He's got a travel allowance. He sits on the floor of the Congress. He can stand up and shoot off his mouth in a session of the Congress. He's a voting member of the Finance Committee, an extremely important committee in Congress. And Robert Underwood himself has said, when asked, well, you can't vote, is that a handicap? And he said, you know, in the House, building relationships is really important. That's how you get stuff done. So Michael can build relationships, and he can log roll because he's got a vote in committee. He just can't log roll on the same scale as people who are members of the 435. Now, you know, being one of 435, that's a lot of power, right? So, yeah, it's true. What Underwood says is true. It doesn't rise to the level of causing me to be overly concerned about it. And once again, I make the comparison with Oceanside, which is about the same size as Guam. If you told the folks in Oceanside, forget about that guy that represents much of the rest of San Diego County, you can have your own non-voting delegate. They snap it up in a heartbeat, along with the taxes and all the rest of the stuff. So for an island with only 210 people on it, we're doing really, really well. And then Underwood goes on to say, if you have no consent of the government, you have no representative democracy. That's correct. If you have no representative democracy, you have no United States of America, Underwood said. I think that's a stretch. I think that's a real stretch. Because for much of its history, we had no United States of America when we had something like 16 or 17 states and something like 10 or a dozen territories. Yeah, we weren't the United States at that time. And then, of course, he's got to trot out this one, second-class citizenship, which is just BS. Second-class citizenship. Everybody who has a U.S. passport is a United States citizen, and he has the same rights and privileges as every other United States citizen similarly situated. But it sounds so good. Neil Weir loves to kick the people of Guam are treated like second-class citizens. Second-class citizens, such as denial of access to federal programs like SSI, was secondary, Underwood said. And I agree with him on that. The acknowledgement of the racist history, Bavacqua said, could potentially be used politically, but he cited the acknowledgement of Hawaii's overthrow by the U.S. government as an example of how it might not be. The resolution can come, but it can say some important things. But if it doesn't address that fundamental issue, then it'll just continue to be a colonial situation, which is what I want. Two things. There are two things which Congress could really do, Underwood said, to affect change. The first would be to fully incorporate Guam into all existing federal programs. How many times have I said that on Tall Tales? In fact, that was my advice to Tina. When you talk with Grijalva, when we thought he was going to chair the committee, just tell him, Grijalva, cut us into SSI. Take off the cap on Medicaid. You can do it. You're a congressman. Okay. The second would be to fully commit some form of political status vote for Guam and the territories. And again, I've talked about that so many times. Congress could pass an amendment to the Organic Act, and they could pretty well lay it out however they wanted to. They could say, section blah, blah, blah of the Organic Act, under the election section, pursuant to the laws of Guam, a referendum may be held to determine the political preference of the native inhabitants of Guam. They could do that, and it would not be unconstitutional. You know why, Jose?
We're not under the Constitution.
The insular cases, those horrible insular cases. They could do that. Or they could, pursuant to the 15th Amendment, the three Civil War amendments all have the same last sentence. And see if I can find it here real quick. The 15th Amendment, the right of citizens of the United States to vote shall not be denied or abridged by the United States or any state on account of race, color, or previous condition of servitude. Okay, that's the Voting Rights Amendment, right? And that was Section 1. Here's Section 2. Congress shall have the power to enforce this article by appropriate legislation. So Congress says, pursuant to our authority under Amendment 15, Section 2, we determine that Guam not being a state, right? The people of Guam being discriminated against on the basis of race, color, previous condition of servitude, may, according to the laws of Guam, have their damn plebiscite. It could be done either way, and it would not be it could be subject to constitutional challenge, but it wouldn't go. And I've been saying that ever since. Now, I know a guy who was in Congress for 10 years. Did he ever introduce anything like that?
Nope.
Did he ever talk about it?
Nope.
He waited until he was out of Congress, ran for election, and got his butt kicked by Michael San Nicolas. Now he wants to talk about it. I have one thing to say about that. Come on, man. So, there's enough hypocrisy here to go around the island several times. Now, we've got Attorney General leaving on a jet plane stated during a University of Guam forum on May 8 that equal protections under the 15th Amendment and lack of guidance from the court on how to move the measure forward were roadblocks. Well, yeah, but if you can't get around the roadblocks anyway, call me up and I'll tell you again.
Sure they're not checkpoints?
Yeah. Congress, Underwood said, has the power to move past that roadblock. Congress has this superpower over territories. What is it that the territories want? Let's ask somebody who was in Congress for 10 years. He could tell you what the territories want. Let's give them political status. Let them have a binding resolution on what they want to be, he said. Under the insular cases, they can give them the authority to determine what they want to be. The insular cases, the Tina wants overruled. And once it's overruled, that all of what Underwood said, gone. It's all gone. The problem, Underwood said, was a lack of political will. Right here on Guam, a lack of political will and a lack of knowing what it is that you're doing. Okay, I'm going to head for the seventh inning stretch, and I'm going to come back to this issue.
Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at guamtraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Busy week? Mescala Bistro in Tumon has you covered. Let us take the worries out of your dinner meal planning. Check out our daily specials or enjoy some of your local favorites. Plus, receive a free kids meal with each adult dinner entree purchased Monday through Thursday. Call 969-2652 for more information or to make a reservation at the Grand Plaza Hotel in Tumon. And don't forget, Jack Larimer is live every Saturday night. Mescla Chamorro Fusion Bistro, a true taste of Guam.
Wrigley Field, the 7th inning stretch. I hope everybody stood up and took a good stretch out there in tailgater land. And now I'm back to Robert Underwood and the Insular cases, which really aren't so villainous after all, if one takes the time to read them and understand them. But I want to once again point out that the one thread that everyone uses to tie this together is racism. Yeah. So I think the popular understanding is that if you can allege racism, you're going to get extra breaks. So the next time you go to McDonald's, walk up and order, I'd like a Big Mac and an order of fries and a Coke. And the clerk says, that'll be $7.95, sir. And you say, gee, I've only got $6. Can I just give you $6? And the clerk said, I'm sorry, sir, it's $7.95. What do you say in response to that, Jose? Racism. That's racism. You have to give it to me for $6. Otherwise, it's racism. And you make a lot of noise, et cetera, and finally the manager will come out and say, what's going on here? He said that we're racist. He did? Oh, we can't have that. We're not racist. What did he want? He wanted to pay for this with, well, let him do it. We're not racist here. That's what people think is going to happen.
It's happening.
It's happening all over the place, yeah. I didn't bring it along. Maybe I'll bring it tomorrow. Fauci said that this whole vaccination thing is racist.
It was, what do they call those? The graduation speech? Yeah, that's what it was.
Is valedictory. Yeah. Yeah, it's racist.
Commencement speech.
Commencement speech, because, more BIPOCs are stricken with the virus than white people. It's obviously racism that causes that. Wow.
All of a sudden, the virus is sentient.
Exactly. Yeah. So wrapping this up here, during the UOG forum, where he was also a panelist, man, this guy gets around, doesn't he? He even had a talk show for a while. Yeah. Underwood said there were 3 levers to be pulled in trying to resolve the matter. Through the courts, as civil rights organizations such as Equally American attempt futilely. They're never going to get anywhere with the stuff they're trying to peddle, except to really piss off the folks in American Samoa. Neil Weir has accomplished that probably to a greater extent than anything else during the American administration of American Samoa. This out-of-town kid coming in here, and as our friend Repeat would say, being the savior, saving the Samoans from something they don't want. They wouldn't touch with Neil Weir's 10-foot pole. So that's one of the levers. Through political connections by working with the Biden administration. Come on, man. And that makes sense. Through the international community by working with organizations like the United Nations. I'd say that's counterproductive. It really is. Because, I'm going to use the word Karen here. If you have a Congress and you have a delegate in Congress and you could surface these things in Congress and you haven't even made an attempt to surface these things in Congress, and then you run to the United Nations Human Rights Commission and say, they aren't treating Chamorros right over there on Guam. And the Human Rights Commission says, well, thank you for coming in here and being a tattletale, Karen. And the members of Congress are saying, human rights, what? Nobody ever said boo about that around here. So Underwood, Robert, how about using our delegate in Congress to push this forward? Now, you don't want to do that, obviously, because after the way you badmouthed him during the campaign, you probably don't even want to recognize his existence. But that would be the way to do it. Have our delegate in Congress draft up a bill along the lines that was just spelled out by the honorable host of this show, introduce it in Congress, log roll, politic, lobby, do what Congress people do. Now, my sense is, if I were the congressman from the 1st District of Wisconsin, and this were appropriate or properly explained to me, I would say, yeah, I'll go along with it. Put me down as a co-sponsor. But if you come in here, you say, Congressman, I want to talk to you about race. Forget it. Get out of here.
Let's start with all those senators who co-authored 5636.
Yeah, those idiots. Absolutely, especially the 2 Republicans. So those levers are not levers, Robert. They are limbs of a dead tree. You just didn't notice. Okay, next on the card here is the Department of Defense versus Protehi-Latexin. Let me check and see who wants to chime in here from the green room. R. Greg. Okay. Good afternoon, R. Greg.
Hey, Bob.
Howdy.
It's James, not Greg, but that's okay. You can call me
I
whatever.
heard you wrong.
Jimbo, whatever.
What is your name again?
James.
James. Okay, howdy, James.
Anyway, quick question. You and I have discussed more than a few times that, obviously Dr. Underwood's an educated, bright individual. I've served with him on a couple of panels. I agree with him on certain things. I don't agree with him on other things. But with that being said, as far as the righteous indignation that everyone seems to think has been perpetrated through, colonization and colonialism and all the other stuff, and now they want the right of self-determination. What is it that they actually want? Do they not want to be part of the United States anymore? Do they want to be a totally free, independent, quote unquote nation?
I've heard him and several others address that many, many times. And as a matter of fact, Melvin Wanpat has even said, even if we could, all of a sudden we could vote, that wouldn't solve it, because we wouldn't have had our right of self-determination. So I've analogized it to back with the real Joe Cruz. It's like the real Joe Cruz says, I want to go to McDonald's and eat. I say, okay, we get down there. And I say, what do you want to eat? Real Joe Cruz, well, I don't know, but I want to choose for myself. Are you going to eat anything? Probably not, but I want to look at the menu. And that's kind of where we are. So, You go back to, the 13 colonies, that era of colonialization. Did they ask the British Parliament for money to hold a rump election to decide what they knew what they wanted? And if the folks here knew what they wanted and advanced it outside the colonizers' government, maybe they'd get somewhere, but they're not going to do that.
Okay, well, I mean, my heritage is Portuguese, Spanish, Caucasian, American, and Chamorro all mixed together. And again, I mean, they're saying this is a Chamorro determination, that no one should be able to have any voice in the matter except true Chamorros, because this is, Chamorro self-determination, et cetera, et cetera. And again, as you and I have discussed more than a couple of times in the past, I think the last true known full-blood Chamorro passed away in like 1896 or 1898.
I think it was longer ago than that, or James.
Everyone here on this island is not, quote-unquote, a Chamorro. We're all
even a person with a good Chamorro name like Underwood?
Yeah, or the Hofschneiders over in CNMI, or, take your pick. I mean, my family, okay? And I'm not afraid to say this in public. I'll tell anyone. Yes, originally when my family came from the Spanish, Portugal area that we're from, it was De Tomaso. And through the years, a couple of hundred of them to be exact, it changed from De Tomaso to Tomas, and it is sometime in the late 1800s, early 1900s, my third great-grandfather decided that Thomas was a better fit. And one of the things that everyone who wanted to be an American or part of America previously, whether they were from Ireland or Germany or England or Scotland or from wherever, they came to the United States looking for something better than what was available, what they would ever be able to have or accomplish for themselves and for their children, wherever it was that they were coming from. And the United States was an opportunity, not a guarantee, an opportunity to do that. And first and foremost, they wanted to be Americans. They could be Irish American, they could be Pacific Islander American, they could be German American, Jewish American, but they first and foremost wanted to be American. And everybody pulled together in World War I, and everybody pulled together in World War II. And they put all of those differences aside because they said, hey, we're Americans first. Okay, well, if we don't want to be part of America anymore, what are we going to do? We're going to print our own money and issue our own passports and try to get the United Nations to recognize us officially? It does not make any sense. I don't buy it. And quite frankly, I can't believe that I've wasted 5 minutes of yours and my time to even talk about it. It doesn't make any sense. We're going to side with Korea, Japan. We're going to become a territory of somebody else's. I mean, China would love to help us out.
Yeah, and that would be the ultimate result. Yeah.
I don't know. I don't understand what it is that they're trying to accomplish with all of this rhetoric, because quite frankly, I think that's what it is, rhetoric.
Well, what it is, what my analysis is, it's what I talk about from time to time, grievance politics. By trotting out these grievances all of the time, they think that it's like my story about going to McDonald's. They're going to get more freebies by trotting out the grievance politics all the time. And Bavakwa working for the colonizer's government, for his working life, and Underwood, drawing a pension from the U.S. House of Representatives. The bona fides just really aren't there when they start talking the grievance politics angle.
Yeah. Well, I mean, either way you look at it from, if they really truly are saying we want to be independent, we don't want to be part of the U.S. anymore, we want to be internationally recognized as our own independent nation, we're going to print our own passport, we're going to have our own travel and customs and our own banking laws and commissions, and we're not going to follow anything that the United States says. We're going to go back to carving rock money. Okay, that's one direction of looking at it, and it doesn't make sense. The other direction of looking at it is, oh, well, we're going to get, like you said, which makes total sense, oh, well, we're going to get more freebies and this and that and whatever. I heard somebody say the other day, well, we should just ask to be a state. And I chuckled, and I said, really? You really want to pay IRS full-rate taxes and everything that goes along with it? You don't understand the unique condition that we have that's totally to our benefit.
Well, when you run into folks like that, R. James, you got to steer them to tall tales so they get educated. Got to go.
I do. I say, hey, you need to meet a guy named Bob.
Thank you.
Somebody you really need to hang out with.
Thanks, R. James. I got to take a short break here, but good talking to you.
Yep.
Top End Pest Control is who you call for all your pest control needs. Got a problem with roaches, ants, spiders, rodents, fleas, ticks, termites? No problem. They do it all. Top End Pest Control is a service-disabled, veteran-owned small business and HubZone certified, serving Guam since 2012. Call them today for a quote, 487-5657, or email topendpest@gmail.com. Check them out on Facebook at Top End Pest Control and give them a like. Top End Pest Control for all your pest control needs.
All dads should own a Traeger. And this Father's Day, you can win a Traeger smoker grill for your dad and feast on flavorful wood-fire crafted meals. Cooked with a flip of a switch. Cook low and slow or high and fast with digital precision on your Traeger pellet grill. Purchase $35 or more in fuel at 76 Circle K and enter to win. Gas up today and join Circle K's Father's Day package giveaway. A Traeger smoker grill, a canopy, a cooler full of meat, and 2 cases of Bud or Bud Light are up for grabs only at Circle K. Conditions apply. Visit 76CircleKGuam.com.
So here we are, Churchill Downs, for the home stretch, and I got a couple of folks here who want to ride the home stretch with me. I've got R. Carl, and I'm looking at my stack here, and it says R. Carl with the most dangerous comments. And then I also have coming on location from the McDonald's drive-thru, I suppose after that example that I just used on the air. Off topic on, he said COVID vaccine? I don't know anything about COVID vaccine, Jose. Did you mean Wuhan virus vaccine? Yeah, okay. That's what drive-thru Jack wants to talk about. So first we go to the most dangerous man in the room and then wind up in the drive-thru with Jack. Yeah, let's hear those dangerous comments, R. Carl.
Hey, Bob. Good afternoon.
Hi.
Yeah, I'd like to toss a theory out to your Facebook audience, the fertile minds of your Facebook audience, because I know you've got a lot of fertile minds listening. You know, it's really a source of endless fascination watching what's going on in America and on Guam. And reading a little bit, thinking more, and trying to figure out what is happening, what has happened. And I've got this theory that nothing is accidental that happens when you have neo-Marxists in the lead of a movement. Even the stuff that seems accidental, a lot of it is not accidental. It's all strategic. The way this decolonization thing was structured, you know, the options of statehood, free association, and separation from America, or separatism, that was no accident. You've talked endlessly about how statehood and free association are not going to happen. And keeping our present relationship off the table, even for discussion, that's all strategic. There's nothing accidental about that. So one of my pet theories is that there are about roughly 170,000 people on Guam. How easy would it be to convince 170,000 people to participate in a vote, to hate America? It's pretty hard, especially a lot of these people have immigrated to Guam, to be a part of the United States. They like citizenship, they like the freedom, personal freedom and all that. So very hard. So if you section off 30+% of those, and then you endlessly work to provoke that segment, to anger them, to build resentment toward America and Western civilization and white people in general, much easier. So I see that as what is happening. Anytime you have neo-Marxists in the lead, and this is led by neo-Marxist academics, it's happening all across the United States, and it explains a lot about what is happening with race and sexual identity being used as leverage points to deconstruct America. The ultimate objective for them is always the same thing. It's always, first, the disintegration and destruction of capitalism, in this case, the kicking out of America from Guam, and the establishment of a social justice heaven on earth, aka socialism, or in this case, democratic socialism, to kind of put some sprinkles on the rot. But that is my theory, and I'm sure you've thought about something like that also. But all this to me is all strategic, and it's really very interesting to watch. It's more educational than any college class on human nature that I've ever seen. But that's just something I wanted to toss out into the minds of your listeners for whatever it's worth.
Good points. As usual, R. Carl, thank you very much for calling up and sharing those with us.
All right. Well, I'll wait and listen to the comments of your next caller.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.
So long. So we've got Drive-Through Jack who wants to go off topic and talk about Wuhan virus vaccine. I don't know. He's asking for an awful lot. Yeah. I'll tell you what, Jack. I'm going to give you permission to go off topic here, provided that you let the lady in the drive-through talk also. Maybe I'll ask her some questions about the Ensler cases, okay?
Okay, Bob. I'm not near a drive-through yet, but I'll be there soon. But I didn't mean to go off topic. It's just that a question came up in the workplace, and I was wondering, I was pondering about it. Just this past couple of weeks, OSHA, I think you heard about it, OSHA came out with a ruling that if the employer requires the employee... Hello?
I'm here.
Yeah, if the employer requires the employee to get the vaccine, the Wuhan vaccine, and if the employee comes down with the side effects or, adverse action to the vaccine, then it's a recordable event. In other words, it becomes a workplace incident. And so a lot of contractors are complaining because, why didn't they make this ruling earlier? And it contradicts Biden's administration of getting full vaccination. And the most important question is, if the employer becomes liable, why aren't the pharmaceuticals liable for this vaccine?
Let me start out there and work backwards, okay?
Okay.
The only liability running between employees and and their employers is what used to be called workman's comp, and that's not heavy duty liability. So what you're basically saying is that side effect caused illness would be a workplace illness and would be covered by workman's comp. And that can't be all that serious. Now, if I were an employer and I'd been requiring that vaccine for a long time, and now all of a sudden I find out the rules have been changed after I made a decision to require, I might not like that too much, but workman's comp liability is just not that heavy duty. Now, on the other part of the question, let's see, what was the other part of your question, Jack?
Why pharmaceuticals aren't liable?
Oh, yeah. Pharmaceuticals aren't liable because Congress passed a statute that eliminated liability for pharmaceutical companies in circumstances like this to encourage research and testing, et cetera. So pharmaceutical companies are not going to be liable. And then there's one other dimension that occurs to me, and that is that the way OSHA is treating it is probably going to cause workman's comp insurance rates to go up, and it might serve to discourage some companies from hiring people that have been vaccinated. It might have the exact opposite effect of what the OSHA norms are after. And of course, I have to say this, when you've got big government, when you've got big bureaucracy, you got OSHA, you're not going to get good results. There will be some salutary parts about it, but most of it is not going to make things better. Does that help you, Jack?
Yeah, so, here we are. I think we're in a weird time. We have politicians wanting to be doctors, and then we got doctors wanting to be politicians. And I think the only people that qualify for that is Rand Paul.
and what's his name? Carson, the former secretary of...
Ben Carson.
Yeah, Ben Carson was a doc. And he really wasn't much of a politician, was he? But Rand Paul is.
Yeah, Rand Paul is. So, so I think that's what we're encountering now. But as far as the self-determination thing and the voting and stuff like that, I believe that, raise the funds privately. Don't use taxpayers' money. Raise the funds privately and hold your own referendum,
Well, and I've said that many times, how serious can the separatists, the Chamorro nationalists be when they expect to use the colonizers' government, a government imposed by a federal statute, to achieve their ends? If they were to set up their own Chamorro nation apart from the government of Guam, they'd have a whole lot more credibility, but of course they'd have a whole lot less participation because people aren't concerned enough about it to do it unless they're on the government payroll. My sense is that if a rally were held at noon on Epau Beach on Saturday for everybody who wanted to separate from the United States, you wouldn't have to worry about social distancing.
And there lies the rub, is that the real seriousness is they're trying to break that 33% threshold, between the three statuses. Right now, they're not even close. I think what did Ron say? They were like 12% or 9% if the vote was taken today.
Uh-huh.
So they don't really want any voting done at all. They're trying to throw those wadded toilet papers up into the ceiling, and they're not sticking. They're just falling down to the ground. So they're not really concerned with the voting at all. I think it's just smoke and mirrors, and it's something to take your eyes away from the real issue, and the real issue is why are these two separate but equal branches of government holding secret meetings? They could have had a roundtable meeting down at the legislature. Could they not have?
Well, I mentioned that the way to do that is the legislature invites the governor to come over to a session, gives her the privilege of the floor, resolves into committee of the whole, and they go ahead and have their meeting. Cameras are on, media's there, everybody can watch. Not a problem. Gotta go, Jack. Good talking to you again, buddy.
Okay.
All right, we'll see you all tomorrow out there in Tailgater Land.
KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Quiet diplomacy. I'm Jack Callahan, Fox News. The White House says that's its plan for the ongoing violence between Israel and Hamas.
President Biden has spoken once again with Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu. In a White House statement, the president reiterated his firm support for Israel's right to defend itself against indiscriminate rocket attacks. Those rocket attacks have been coming from the Hamas militant group. Neither side in this conflict appears to be backing down. Hamas had once again threatened this big metropolis of Tel Aviv with more rockets. So far, we haven't seen any. Analysts are trying to figure out if they're pausing to reflect or reload.
Fox's Greg Palcott. The U.S., for the third time, has blocked a statement from the UN Security Council expressing grave concern over the conflict. Some members of Congress have called on the White House to demand of both sides a ceasefire. Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell reacting on the Senate floor.
To say that both sides need to de-escalate downplays the responsibility the terrorists have for initiating the conflict in the first place and suggests Israelis are not entitled to defend themselves against ongoing rocket barrages.
Israel this morning reporting it shot down a drone near its border with Jordan. President and Dr. Biden have released their 2020 tax returns, showing they earned just over $600,000 last year, nearly 26% of it going to federal taxes. The president said yesterday parents who qualify will be getting child tax credit checks starting a few weeks from now.
July 15th. And the 15th of every month thereafter throughout the year, you will get deposited in your bank account half of your tax cut, at least $250 per child each month.
The payment's part of the $1.9 trillion relief package approved by Congress earlier this year.